after I revealed my John's infidelity to my family. It can't be helped, can it? You, a useless wife who can't even bear children. Maybe you should just leave? A useless woman who can't even give birth to children. Isn't divorce the best option for everyone? They burst into laughter while saying these things. Understood. Then I'll call my parents here. Please say those exact words directly to my parents. And so, I made a phone call and invited my parents. I am Jessie, a 30-year-old housewife, currently undergoing fertility treatments. Since my father passed away in an accident when I was young, my mother raised me single-handedly until I became an adult. Thanks to her, I never felt deprived and lived a life like anyone else. 5 years ago, I was able to have a happy marriage. I quit my job and became a full-time housewife. My husband, John, is an ordinary 32-year-old office worker. I had hoped for a peaceful married life. Despite trying for 5 years, we still haven't been able to conceive a child. I have been going to the hospital for infertility treatments for years, but we are still unsuccessful. Consequently, I find myself living in a constant state of stress. And the main cause of this is the excessive pressure from my mother-in-law. At first, my mother-in-law asked in a gentle manner, "Still no children?" But after a year had passed, she started saying things like, "Still unable to conceive? Isn't it too late? Quit your job and make time for the sake of having a child." Eventually, she went on to say, "Are you really actively pursuing fertility treatments? Could it be that you're avoiding having a child and using contraception? Focus on your fertility treatments already." In the end, I decided to quit my job. Fertility treatments involve various tests and treatments that require money. Don't let John waste more money on this. Why can't you have a child? It's frustrating to be told such things. However, one day, my mother-in-law went so far as to accompany me to the hospital to ensure that I was really undergoing fertility treatments. She confronted the attending physician, saying, "Why can't my daughter-in-law have children? Is she trying to deceive us with some strange treatment?" She relentlessly pressed the doctor. "It's not solely your wife's fault. There could also be factors related to her husband." To which my mother-in-law exclaimed, "That's impossible. Are you saying it's John's fault? There's absolutely no way. The fault lies entirely with this wife." She lashed out at the doctor and nurses before storming off. I felt deeply embarrassed and later apologized profusely. The doctor showed sympathy, saying, "You're in a difficult environment." I also spoke to my John about how unbearable the pressure from his mother had become. John responded, "There's no point in saying things like that. She's at an age where I want grandchildren." And that was the end of it. In the first place, my John wasn't actively involved in our fertility journey. Every single day, he would say, "I'm tired today. Let me rest." Even when I told him it was my ovulation day, he would often ignore me. Fertility treatments can't be done alone. Then, at one point, I mentioned, the doctor suggested that you should also get tested. John retorted, "Are they saying it's my fault? There's no way. Going to the hospital for fertility treatments is embarrassing." He started treating the whole process as if it were shameful. He felt completely responsible for everything and thought that I should just handle the treatment on my own since he wouldn't cooperate. My mother-in-law often showed up unannounced at our house and would even enter our bedroom without permission. Checking every nook and cranny, she would say, "You're not using contraception, are you?" And then she would leave, saying, "It's because of your infertility that we Your in-laws are so disappointed. Please do something about it. Why did I have to endure such comments? The pressure and stress were overwhelming, and I was completely exhausted. Then, one day, I had an errand to visit my parents' house after a long time. Before leaving, I told John, "I'll be back late at night, so go ahead and have dinner without me." I felt relieved when I saw my mother after such a long time. Perhaps she was being considerate, but she didn't bring up the topic of grandchildren at all. In front of my kind mother, I let my guard down and opened up a little about undergoing fertility treatments and the immense pressure from my mother-in-law. Upon hearing this, my mother grew very concerned and said, "You don't have to push yourself so hard." Those gentle words from my mother made me feel at ease. Just when I was thinking that being at my parents' house was truly comforting, my father came home. Actually, last year, my mother remarried a man her acquaintance introduced her to. He was a man of great kindness and reliability, so I quickly accepted him as my father. When I mentioned my fertility struggles, my father said, "If anything happens, let me know right away. You can trust me." The kindness of my parents deeply touched me, and it renewed my determination to keep trying from tomorrow onwards. I feel energized now. "It's early, but I'll head back home today," I said as I left my parents' house. Although I had originally planned to have dinner there, I wanted to return home and have a proper conversation with John about our fertility journey. When I returned home and opened the front door, I saw a pair of unfamiliar women's shoes. I had a bad feeling, but I tried to convince myself it couldn't be true. I started recording with my smartphone and quietly opened the door to the room. Completely unaware of my presence, there was my John, embracing a strange woman, both of them naked. The woman noticed me and exclaimed, "Huh?" John turned to look at me, his face turning pale. "Jesse, why are you here?" The woman hastily dressed and ran out of the house. "What is going on here?" I asked, and John let out a deep sigh before adopting a defensive attitude. "Well, I also need a way to relieve myself. I mean, I can't find that release with you anymore. Or rather, I don't see you as a woman." He tried to justify his actions. "How can you think that way, knowing the struggles and emotions I go through during difficult infertility treatments? Now, change your clothes." I hurriedly helped my John get dressed, and then pulled his arm, heading straight to my in-laws' house. I intended to seek some sort of reprimand from them. At my in-laws' house, both my parents-in-law and sister-in-law were present. I shared with everyone what my John had done. However, the response I received was beyond belief. "Well, isn't that inevitable? It's because you lack appeal, Jesse. It's not my son's fault. Mother-in-law, you, a defective wife who can't even have children, maybe it's about time you left," my mother-in-law said with a cold tone. Following her, my sister-in-law and father-in-law chimed in. "Useless, unable to bear children." My brother drew the short straw. "Poor him. Perhaps it's time for a divorce, for the sake of everyone." They all burst into laughter while saying such things. "Well, since everyone seems to be saying that, maybe we should get a divorce. Dealing with fertility treatments and all that is bothersome, and everyone would be happier." He laughed and patted my shoulder. At that moment, I surpassed the limit of what I had been enduring. "I understand. In that case, I'll call my parents here, and you can say those words directly to them." As I said that, my parents-in-law and sister-in-law momentarily hesitated. If it's for a discussion, then that's fine. By the way, I heard your mother recently remarried, didn't she? I felt sorry for her being a single parent, but remarrying at that age? She must really love men. Hey, you shouldn't say that in front of her. We need to have a calm discussion. Otherwise, we'll be at a disadvantage. They freely said whatever they wanted and laughed. Even if you say you're calling your parents, your father didn't raise you, so he won't be of any use if he comes, right? When my John said that, everyone burst into laughter again. But their laughter could only last for so long. I explained the situation to my parents, and asked them to come to my in-laws' house. 30 minutes later, my parents arrived at the in-laws' house. I urged my mother-in-law to let them in, and as soon as my father appeared in the living room, both my father-in-law and John's expressions turned sour. Why are you here? This can't be true. What's going on, Jesse? I couldn't make any sense of their reactions. What's going on? Both of you, let's proceed with the divorce discussion quickly. Oh, I see. When you said she remarried, I thought you had caught a young man, but it seems like you chose quite an old one, Mother. She said such things and smirked. But both my father-in-law and John were in an unusual state. Idiots. Both of you shut your mouths. Who do you think this person is? Don't say rude things. This person is. He shouted angrily at my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Sensing that something serious was happening, both of them fell silent. You've treated my daughter quite poorly. My father said that, and glared at my father-in-law and John with a stern expression. Our daughter. Could it be that, well, the company president is Jesse's? Sweating profusely, my father-in-law spoke to my father. Plural, my John was at a loss for words. Upon hearing those words, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law finally understood the situation, and their expressions turned sour. I am Jesse's father. Is there something wrong with me being her father? That's not the company president. We were just talking about how Jessie is such a wonderful wife. Interrupting my father-in-law's excuse, I played the recording of the conversation I had with my parents-in-law and sister-in-law earlier, from my smartphone. Yes, when the topic of divorce came up, I had recorded the conversation between the four of them as evidence. Father muttered, I see, upon hearing it. Then, in the frozen atmosphere, there was a silence for a while. Jesse. The earlier conversation was obviously a joke. We were trying to make you laugh because you seemed shocked. I was told that, and I clearly said to my mother-in-law. In addition to this recording, I have kept recordings of all the abusive remarks I've been subjected to. And of course, I also have video evidence of Hiroshi cheating. It's too late for excuses. No way. Jesse, why didn't you tell me that your father is the president of our company? That's dirty. Upon hearing John's words, my father glared at him and spoke in a firm tone. Father, so if I weren't Jesse's father, you think you can say anything to her? Do not be silly. It's truly regrettable that such vulgar individuals were in our company. Both of you better think carefully about your future. John, upon hearing those words, turned pale. My father-in-law could no longer say anything and collapsed to the floor. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law had tears in their eyes from the shock. I understand that this kind of approach could be considered unfair. However, if they attacked me as a family, don't I have the right to retaliate as a member of my own family? I said to John that when I exit parents-in-law's house. After years of undergoing treatment at the hospital, it was concluded that there was no issue with me. So, the probability is high that the reason for our inability to have children lies with you, John. It will be quite a struggle for you to have children in the future. Upon hearing that, John sat on the floor in a daze. My parents and I left the despairing atmosphere of my in-laws' house behind. Subsequently, John and I proceeded with the divorce. He had been trying to contact me multiple times, but I blocked all of his attempts. Then, on that day, using all the things I had been told by that family, the evidence video of John's infidelity, and the verbal abuse I had endured from my mother-in-law, I was able to demand a staggering 8 million yen in compensation. Moreover, my father, who was furious about this incident, made a decisive move by immediately terminating my father-in-law and John from the company, inflicting a significant blow. I requested the 8 million yen compensation to be paid in a lump sum, but since I had also been fired from the company, my father-in-law and John faced severe financial obligations. In the end, due to the enormous amount of compensation, my in-laws were forced to sell their house, and the whole family moved to a cheap apartment in the countryside, living in misery. They insisted that it was all because of those words spoken back then, and their family relationships had become the worst. My father said gently, all I could do was to fire that father and son. But if it brings even a little relief to Jesse, I'm happy as a father. My mother supported me through the mental damage I had endured, and finally, I was able to break free from a life of pressure and stress. I am truly grateful for my parents' kindness. Now, I have been blessed with the gift of new life. It has been 2 years since then, and I got married to a kind-hearted man. We are eagerly awaiting the arrival of our baby, happily sharing this anticipation together. Considering how smoothly I became pregnant, perhaps, as my doctor had suggested, the cause of infertility was indeed with John. Now, I am surrounded by loving people, including my husband, and I am living a happy life. I look forward to the days ahead, filled with even greater happiness when our child is born. I am genuinely excited for what lies ahead.